Hi everybody, it's me, A.B, and in today's video, I interviewed my parents. Some of you know they are a pastor and a pastor's wife, and I asked them some questions about what it's like to be a pastor's wife, and they gave me some answers, and here's the video. Record. So, question for both of y'all is, what are some challenges that you face being a pastor and pastor's wife?
I would say one of the biggest challenges that we face is dealing with people. People not listening, people not wanting to grow, people not wanting to learn, people not taking the advice that's given to them.
Well, right now, I think that the biggest thing that we're dealing with is COVID, because everything's shut down and people are scared, and it's hard to make people feel welcomed and loved when you can't shake their hand or give them a hug or go visit them. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now.
Okay, now a question for Pastor Murray. How did you know God was calling you to minister?
Well, we were at a revival, actually, like a day before you were born. I don't even remember. I remember. It was John Hamlin and Shelton Smith were preaching the revival. And I knew that God was calling me to do something. I didn't know what he was calling me to do, but I knew he was calling me to do something.
How did you know?
And as I listened to the preaching, the Holy Spirit began to speak to my heart. And I didn't know what the Holy Spirit was. So at that time, I just felt something speaking to my heart. You know, people talk about their subconscious, their conscious says this or feels this way. And so to me, it was just like my subconscious was speaking to me or talking to me. And come to find out, as I grew in faith and learned, that was the Holy Spirit calling me into ministry. And so that's how I knew that he was calling me into ministry.
Okay, now a question from Mama. If you could give any piece of advice to any other pastor's wife, what would it be and why?
Ooh. I guess my advice would be not to burden yourself down with the church work, so much so that your walk with Jesus, your own personal walk with Jesus, suffers, or that it hinders your ability to be a mentor to your children, because it's very easy to get busy with church.
Back to Pastor Murray. Why did you decide to become a pastor?
Well, once I realized that it was the Holy Spirit speaking to me, talking to my pastor at the time, and started to learn. And we had, I had just gotten saved not too long before that. And I was reading and studying the Bible and started learning more and more about what that meant, what it meant to serve God. And so when I recognized that the Holy Spirit was dealing with my heart about ministry, and he even began to clarify that for me, it just, again, the Holy Spirit speaking to my heart, that it was obviously a call to serve as a pastor. Really, there was no other option. I mean, there was walk the way of the world or walk the way of God. And as I was going to walk the way of the world, I received a text message from my pastor that said, "There is a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." And it was like God giving me a stark reminder that to walk the way of the world was the way of death, but to walk in his way, whether it was good, whether it was hard times, difficult times, that was the way that I was supposed to go. And so I just gave up my own desires and decided to walk his way and become a pastor.
Okay, now a question for both of you. Did you ever second guess your calling?
Yes. Since I wasn't called to be a pastor's wife, I was called to be his wife, and then he was called to be a pastor. So when we got married, I was just Mary Kimball's wife. I wasn't necessarily a pastor's wife. And so I've always felt severely inadequate to be a pastor's wife in any capacity, children's minister's wife. I mean, any kind of minister's wife, I felt that's just crazy. But ministry is very hard. And I think that second guessing what the Lord has called you to do, whether that's just have your own YouTube where you talk about Jesus, I think that that's something that the devil's going to end up attacking eventually and saying, you're not really making an impact, or you don't really have to do that. So I think that's pretty common, to second guess yourself and what the Lord's asked you to do.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. That's a question of my calling. Because just as she said, we walked through difficult times, difficult trials. I mean, whenever we left our church in Tennessee, that was through a very difficult situation. So I began questioning if that's what God intended on me to continue to do. But even through just different seasons in service, you find yourself asking, Lord, am I doing what you actually want me to do? Am I where you want me to be? Because I also think that especially for pastoral ministry, there's more than just the calling to the ministry of pastor. There's a calling to the location that God intends you to serve. There's a calling. There's so many things involved in that, and so it is difficult. And as the devil berates you and beats you down, you constantly are second guessing. Am I making the right decisions? Am I listening to God, or am I listening to myself? Where am I at? So yeah, absolutely.
And this question goes to both of y'all. What is your favorite Bible verse?
Just one verse, or like a part?
Verse, and explain why.
Oh. My favorite Bible verse would probably have to be Matthew 6:30, and it's just the phrase, and it's actually said 4 times in the Bible, and it's Jesus talking to his disciples where he says, "O ye of little faith." And I think that's my favorite verse because I view my faith as something small. There's always room for growth, but every time I start worrying about something, I'm like, Lord, I just don't know how you're going to do this. And he always comes through, and I'm reminded my faith is so small. But to know that the disciples walked with Jesus day in and day out for 3 years, and that their faith was little too, I feel like that's an encouragement, because I'm never going to have this massive faith that I can be like, woohoo, I did it, I've got great faith. I think our faith is always going to be growing as long as we're walking with the Lord as we should be. So it just reminds me to keep growing in my faith.
So for me, and it's hard because I love the whole Bible, but for me, Proverbs 3:5 is one that I've held on to since I got saved. I've jumped from verse to verse. So this is my favorite, but through life and through the questions, even the questions you've asked us about the difficulty of ministry, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths. I made a statement today in a sermon that joy is the ability to get through a difficult situation because you're leaning on God's understanding and not your own. And I think that that's the key to walking a Christian life and walking through life in general, is leaning on God's understanding and not your own.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the last question goes to Mama. Is it easy or difficult to be a pastor's wife?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult because even though I am not the public face of the ministry, that's my husband, I still deal with everything that he deals with. I bear everybody's burdens. If somebody, falls deathly ill, or somebody loses a child or a husband or something, it's still on my mind, and I'm there to minister to the mom or to the wife in the same way that Murray would need to minister to a husband or to a father. So in some ways, I am a minister because I minister to the women that the pastor needs to be able to reach, but because he is a man, he cannot reach the same way. But also in the sense that not everybody likes the pastor. You can't make everybody happy, and there's lots of times where doing what the Lord wants us to do makes people upset or even angry, and they attack the pastor or the pastor's family. And as the pastor's wife, I have to conduct myself as much as possible with some grace and and act in a godly fashion, and that's very hard because I'm not a very nice person all the time.
All right, guys, so that was my mom and dad, pastor's wife, and they answered hopefully some of y'all's questions. And if you have any questions for the future, let me know down in the comments below what those are, and I will ask them, and hopefully they will get answered in a future video. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the post notification so you can get notified when I post out new videos like these. Bye, guys. So they answered the questions, and as you heard, stop. So they answered the questions. There he is.